Hello, I'm Chilton Knudsen. I'm currently serving as the interim bishop here in the Diocese of Lexington while the diocese searches for the next bishop through a process of nomination and election. That's the process we're in right now, gathering names, screening names, and then ultimately presenting a ballot for the people of the diocese to elect the next bishop. Another thing for us to talk about is the tensions that exist within the ministry of a bishop. Now, I think tension is part of life. All of us experience tensions between conflicting purposes and conflicting values that we have. But I think bishops experience tensions partly because the expectations of bishops are so diffuse, and partly because everything that a bishop is responsible for is not all of one kind of concern or area of responsibility. So, for example, we expect bishops to be executives, to be decision makers, to be managers, to be visionaries, to communicate, coordinate, to set a tone and a direction, and continue to hold that before the people. So bishops are people with executive responsibilities. Bishops administer budgets. Bishops are responsible for the oversight of property. Bishops have personnel responsibilities. Bishops need to be gifted at a combination of executive, financial, quantitative responsibilities, but also intuitive and big picture responsibilities as well. And sometimes those are in tension. But often a greater tension exists between the executive responsibility and the expectations that people have, reasonable expectations, of the bishop as chief pastor. Sometimes what is in the interest of the institution, the organization, the communal life of the diocese, is really at odds with what might be the understood interest of a particular clergy person or a particular congregation. A story I might tell about that is the congregation that came to me and said, "We are having difficulty with our finances. Our well has run dry and we need to dig a new well through rock, and that's an expense that we haven't anticipated. And so what if you give us a break on our expectation, on the expectation that we will contribute to the diocesan budget? Just give us a break this year. Cut us a little break, if you would." Well, my pastoral heart understood the struggle and the anxiety and the difficulty they were facing as a poor rural congregation with hardly any excess money. They were doing well to simply pay the expenses that were part of their life. On the other hand, my executive self was conscious that many other churches were also struggling with financial challenges and hardships, and they were able, through sacrifice, to make their contribution to the diocesan budget. And so here's the tension: the pastoral concern for hardship and difficulty, the desire to help, to give a hand up to struggling people and struggling congregations, over against the experience a bishop has of the whole. Bishops have oversight responsibilities, which means bishops keep the whole in mind and are responsible for the well-being of the whole. So how is the whole affected by a particular concession that might be made to a hardship situation? What places will suffer as a result of that decision that is made in favor of a particular congregation? So it doesn't mean decisions have to be made one way or the other all the time, but that the tension is real. And bishops who, for some reason or other, believe they can evade that sort of tension are going to discover real quickly that it comes up again and again. Another instance of that same tension is when a bishop needs to exercise the responsibility to enforce the discipline of the church. Bishops do promise to uphold the discipline, to promote the well-being and the integrity of the church. And so when an individual, an employee, a member of the clergy, a lay leader, is impaired or is unable to exercise their responsibility, or is crossing boundaries, or is engaging in anything that jeopardizes the integrity of the church, the bishop's job at that point is to maintain that oversight responsibility, making sure the integrity of the church, the well-being of the whole, is the prime concern. Bishops recognize the pastoral implications, recognize them well. People who are in trouble, people who have crossed boundaries, people who have engaged in misconduct, or people who are of questionable fitness for their ministry, there is pain there, and bishops know that. But a bishop cannot be at the same moment a pastor to that pain and a person who upholds that responsibility of oversight for the integrity of the diocese. A good and wise decision at that point is to make sure pastoral care is available to the hurting person, but by some other means, some boundaried, separated means. And bishop's job is to make sure that pastoral need is met somehow, while the bishop exercises responsibility for the integrity and the well-being of the whole. Another way bishops have, I think, a tension inherent in their responsibilities is the public-private question. Now, bishops are public people. Usually, particularly in a smaller diocese where there's a more intimate dynamic, bishops are pretty visible. Bishops often grow to be well known in the community, partly because of their responsibilities to the community at large, their membership on boards, their involvement with agencies. And so a bishop has a public, visible face. A bishop also has a private life, a life with family and friends, and sometimes there is a tension there. I remember going out to dinner with my family on my son's birthday. We went to a restaurant, his choice, his favorite place. It was in the middle of a time of great controversy in the Episcopal Church. Not an uncommon situation, really, but a very sharp and heated controversy. So as we were sitting there having our dinner, some people from across the restaurant came over to our table and insisted on having time to talk to me about what they felt regarding this controversy the church was undergoing. One part of me wanted to say, I'm with my family. I'm off duty. Please call me later. Give me an opportunity to talk to you at another time. I was also aware, though, that there was some very heated and very intense emotions being expressed by these people who dropped by our table. And I didn't want to exacerbate their distress by rebuffing them at that moment. So there I was in that tension. I'm a private person, I'm a mom, having a birthday dinner with her son. And I'm also a public person who people recognize from newspapers, television, public appearances, as a person who represents or reminds the public of issues that they are aware of in the church. So there I was, sitting there at dinner with the two sides in tension. Now, I'll tell you what I did, and fortunately it worked out well. I stood up and said, let me talk to you for a few minutes over here. So I left the table where my family was, encouraged them to continue their dinner, went over into a corner and said, help me out here. I'm with my son, it's his birthday. I want to be present to you, I want to hear your concerns, I want to understand what it is you're saying. I can't pay attention to you right now. would you please call my office and find a time when I could come over and sit with you, with like-minded people that you might want to have join you, and I promise you my full attention. That resolved the tension. But I'm conscious that there was a lot of grace that came from the people who wanted to be heard. Sometimes that kind of grace just isn't available in the moment because people are feeling intensely. I was thankful, and I thanked them then and later for their understanding about my tension and my desire to give my full attention to my family.